Nicole. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you so much for being here.
I am delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Awesome. Well, we can jump right in. So I am here today with Lauren Holleran of the Holleran team out of Cambridge, Massachusetts, Gibson Sotheby's International Realty. Lauren has been with the company, I'm trying to do quick math, about 10 years.
That's crazy. I think that's about right.
Yeah.
9 years. Yeah.
I was going to say maybe not quite 10, but we have definitely became quick friends, but I feel like even better friends as years have gone on. You've given me some of the best like children advice that I always say in my head. You gave me two things before I ever had kids that I always say, change is as good as a break. There's something else that I can't think of now, but maybe I'll remember it before the end. But yes, we talk a lot and I watch what you do a lot and I admire what you do a lot. You do about $150 million in sales a year at this point, which is crazy. And I'd love for you to talk through just who you are and tell us about your team. But what I admire most is you're always trying new things. And we wanted to do a podcast together. We were kind of open to a topic because you do a lot of great stuff that I think a lot of people would love to hear about. But recently I've noticed subconsciously, I was noticing and starring and saving your emails because the subject lines were great. Like just the content was great. Everything seemed really easy and readable. And I just thought, wow, whatever she's doing is working. And so I had asked you about it. And that's what we're going to dive into today. So could you talk us through quickly just who you are, give us a sense of your team and what you guys are all about, and then we'll jump into the topic.
Yeah, for sure. I've been at Gibson Sotheby's International Realty, I think 9 years, and was in the business for 11 years before that. I always know exactly how long my real estate career is because our older twin boys were born like 3 weeks after I started. So now they're almost 20, and so is my real estate career. And I live in Cambridge, and have been in Cambridge for, I think, 26 years, something like that. And really have a very geographically focused practice. We work almost exclusively in Cambridge and Somerville. And I think that's part of what we enjoy about it is having such deep knowledge of a relatively small market. I think allows us to be pretty effective, know all the inventory, and give great advice to our buyer and seller clients. And my team, I'm nothing without them. They're amazing. Alberto and Mike also sell real estate. They're Alberto Ovalle and Mike George. They are fantastic. Just incredibly client service oriented. They're smart. They're fun. They're just terrific. And then we have an admin, Andrea Hawk, who's incredible. She really keeps all the trains running on time in the nicest, most gracious way. And then Ann Bunn does strategic initiatives for us, which really means like whatever we think is a good idea, she just figures it out and runs with it. And it's been really like a very exciting development bringing Ann on. She came on in September. And it's given me just an opportunity to do execute some of these ideas that I've had for a long time, but haven't really, it's like changing the tire on a moving car, trying to do anything in this business because you're always busy doing the work. So how do you work on the work? And sort of the secret weapon for helping me work on the work.
That's awesome. Yeah, your team. I love your team. And I feel like you guys just have your wheelhouse, like the way that you operate. I've always admired the way that you can explain or show data to clients or whoever's listening. I feel like everything you do is very like clean and simple, calm, like just your communication style in general. And that's why lately I've noticed that your written communication had been even more effective. I couldn't even tell you how many emails. It's insane a day. I mean, I'm sure I know everybody does. I'm not like I get more emails than you, but we have almost 500 agents.
Competition I wouldn't want to win.
I know that's a race to the bottom. But I feel like I'm on, especially with real estate agents, I'm just on a lot of lists and I never want to, unsubscribe to anyone. I'm always like sort of glancing, but admittedly, I do just quickly archive things. When we hang up this call, I'll probably archive 40 emails, but your emails lately, not that I quickly archived yours in the past, but I noticed them. Like the subject line jumped out at me. I was starring them. I was opening them and being like, one of them, the way that you're doing it, I was like, that's a really cool way for me to communicate with company. Like just something, it's so noisy out here and they were cutting through the noise. And so I had to ask you, and you had told me you read a book and you had a friend. So can we jump right into that?
Yeah, totally. I'm so delighted that you noticed the writing, because we have put a real concerted effort into that over the past 6 months, and going forward we will continue to, and it's just been terrific. And the idea is completely ripped off of my friend Todd Rogers, who is a behavioral scientist. He's at the Harvard Kennedy School, works in public policy, and he wrote a book called Writing for Busy Readers. And he and I go on a walk once a month, and so I've heard about the book from the very genesis of the idea, through the publishing, and I am just so passionate about the topic. You pointed out, Nicole, I've always loved data, and being able to take data and make it understandable to clients is something it's a challenge I enjoy. But it all comes down to communication. Like if you think about communication, it's like me taking what's in my head and putting it in your head, right? But there's like so much space in between for things to go wrong. So how can I most effectively get what's in here into your head? And whether that's about data or anything, all we do is communicate with our clients, our colleagues, our partners, whatever it is. So really cribbing off of Todd's work, I thought about how to apply a lot of his principles to real estate and what we do. And it's been terrific. So it's nothing that dramatic. It doesn't even deserve this big a preamble because it's such a simple idea, but just write less. Like, we are all overwhelmed by information. They say, the research shows that these days we get as much information in a day as is in the whole Hobbit, if you read that book. It's something like some hundreds of thousands of words.
Yes.
And that's coming at us, and we have to quickly sort what's worth our time, what isn't. And the real revolutionary idea here is people aren't reading. Like, if you write anything that is halfway deemed to be impenetrable or difficult or complicated, it just gets either archived, or I do this all the time. I get this newsletter from this mortgage broker. It's such a good newsletter. It's so filled with just terrific content, and it's always interesting, all of that. Whenever I receive it, I'm like, oh, yes, his next one came out, and I set it aside, and I have every intention of going back and reading it, and I so rarely do. And I think a lot of us do this. As I've talked with more people about it, they're like, oh yeah, you get a long email, you set it aside, I'm going to get back to that. We don't get back to it. So what all of that means for us is, as communicators, which we all are, if you want to be read, it needs to be dead simple. And dead simple can be interpreted in a couple different ways, or realized in a couple different ways. One is just simply using fewer words. So just think about overall volume of what you're writing. If it's an email, take it from 2 paragraphs to half a paragraph. There's that great Blaise Pascal line, the French mathematician, I think in the 1700s. He said, I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time. And it's absolutely right. It takes a lot more effort to write less. If we're just allowed to, put everything down on the page, that's often a great first step. And that's often how I write. I can't change my ways entirely, but I write these lengthy emails, and then I have to go back through and really distill it down to its most salient point. And then, so fewer words is one. The other is fewer ideas you're trying to communicate. So if I'm trying to tell you, you need to clean up your condo, and you need to get me these documents from the condo association. You're preparing your condo for the market. And I'm telling you, here's what you need to do to prepare it. You need to get me these documents from, I'd say it nicer than this, but get me these documents from the association, and I don't know what a third thing is. Go see these 3 other condos on the market because I want you to be able to benchmark value. Those are 3 distinct ideas, and they're all important. But if you want your email to be read and executed on, you have to, as someone said once, kill your darlings. You need to figure out what's your most important one. And maybe you figure out in terms of timing, what I need Nicole to do first is get her condo prepared to go on the market. So I dropped the other 2 and just communicate that one. And if you see it really crisp, that can be 3 sentences.
Right.
Get that through. It will be read and hopefully executed on.
It's a practice in self-awareness. I think as you were talking, it's like emotional intelligence is so important in this business. And a lot of people do say, there's a saying, I don't know what it is, about, smart people are the ones that can take something complicated and simplify it so everyone can understand. Like, anybody can take enough time to understand something confusing, complicated, and make themselves sound smart talking about it. But it's how do you make everybody who didn't spend that much time looking at it, reading it, whatever it might be. And I think that that's such an important thing to have in this business, because it's a people business, it's a relationship business. And honestly, it's what we do. We understand complex things about the real estate industry, about all the sales and things that you're doing. But the goal is to be an advisor to people that don't do this every day and help them understand what needs to get done quickly. And I do think it's something that ends up shooting people in the foot. A lot of times people want to convey how much they're doing.
Yes.
So they feel this need to make this big, long list. If we need to do this and we need to do this. But what people appreciate and what I think really have hired a professional to help with is just simplify it for me.
Yeah. And I do think there's actually a time for an overwhelming amount of information. For example, our proposals are, I would say, pretty dense, with analysis, insight about the market, property valuation, all that. It's intentionally so, because I want them to know we did the work.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually don't care if they read it.
Right.
That's important. If you're going to write something dense, you have to not care that they're going to read it. But the whole thing is a signal. And it is good. If you read it, there is an intelligence in there that they'll pull out. But we often, for example, with a proposal, we'll sometimes separate out valuation and just put that in the body of the email. Say, here's where we think you land. Just a very simple email, and attach, please find our marketing proposal. And that's got all the density in it.
Yes.
So
right. So there's a time and a place to convey all the work that you're putting in, but knowing when that is and when you just need to be concise.
Yeah. And it's often when that is when you're signaling or when you don't need a response. But when you need a response, you have to make it easy. There's this concept developed in the 80s of user-centered design, where if you think of, everything's designed. It used to be that you would get a product and it would be sort of complicated to figure out and all that. This design revolution started in the 80s of user-centered design, really put the burden on the designer that if the user can't figure out how to use your product, it's your fault. It's not the user's fault, right? So think of writing the same way. If your recipient is not doing what you need them to do with that information, guess what? It's your fault.
Right.
It's not their fault.
Right. No, it's so true.
Or maybe fault isn't the right word. My older twin boys would always say, like, their paper, magically disappeared from Google Classroom or something. And they'd be like, it's not my fault. And we'd always say, it might not be your fault, but it is your problem.
Right.
So
I did remember the advice that you said too. And I wrote it down as you were talking. Never get too cocky or too despondent.
Yeah, it's all about to change.
Tell myself that all the time. Yeah. And it does.
Yeah.
You won't even say like, oh, we've had a good morning so far. Cause you're like, that could change at any moment, or vice versa.
My sister's always like, she has kids the same age as mine. She's always like, so-and-so has really rounded a corner. And I'm like, just to go around the next corner.
Yes. You're almost waiting for like something during that phone call to happen.
Right.
Don't jinx yourself.
But so yeah, so putting the burden on the writer to make it clear and digestible. Well, I
Mhm.
wanted to mention, so about the newsletters you were talking about, we've been testing since I think October, two different formats of newsletters. Our readers get them, I hope their readers, our recipients get them uh, each one once a month. So every 2 weeks, one of these goes out. One of them is a pretty traditional newsletter with headings and a paragraph and a picture. So each content section, we try to do about 5 content sections. Each of them has a heading, a picture, and about a paragraph of writing. We try to make them interesting, all of that. And then the other version of it that we send 2 weeks later is called Three Things, and it's just 3 bullet points. And sometimes I will sneak a second sentence into one of the bullet points, but I really try to have them be 1 sentence long. And they're linked to outside information, but it
Mhm.
would say something like the first single family sale in Cambridge this year just happened and at this address and received 5 offers and is selling well above the asking price. There's a link through to that listing, but there are no pictures. There's no headings. It's just 3 bullet points. And it might be, we just sent one that said, or no, that's one we're sending out today, but might say, have you been to the patio at the old Atwood's Tavern? Check it out. It's opening right now. And
Mhm.
a link to it, but just super short. Anyway, the click-through rate on that 3 things, the open rate is super high, but it's high for both of them. And then, but the click-through rate on the 3 things and engagement is huge. And I get so many emails back from people who are like, I love this. This was great. This was great. And it's not that the content is any better than the other newsletter. It's just that for whatever reason, because it's short and people can see it all above the fold and it's boom, 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 they're engaging with it.
And
So for me, that's been so telling.
yeah. It like as you're saying it too, because I'm realizing how I felt when I looked at it. Like when you just said, because it's probably the same lender, because I do the same thing with a lender that I get every week, and it's a great email. But it's yet another thing that goes into the abyss of things I need to do. And having an email that short, I'm not someone, I don't live in Cambridge. I probably, a lot of that doesn't apply to me. I don't care. I'm not looking at that being like a lot of this doesn't apply to me because I can be done with
Yeah.
it. And there's no sense of like, there's not a lot of sense of like finishing or accomplishing when you're going through your inbox. Everything feels like it's like so long. I'll look at that later. Or like you kind of scan, you're like, I hope I didn't miss
Unfinished
anything.
everything.
Archive.
Yeah.
This is just like, oh, good. I saw everything she sent. I'm done. And you get like, you feel happy. Like I can like you said, even a text. We were saying like if you receive a text with all this stuff, and even if it's valid,
Yeah.
reasonable things that you need to do, you're like, okay, I'll look at that later. Whereas like if you get a text just one question, you can answer it and you feel great, like good, that one's done. And it
So
sounds ridiculous, but this is the world we're living in. I was talking to you about feeding AI articles, like
yeah.
feeding an article through AI just to give me a shortened version. And like I'm sitting here being a millennial feeling like, oh, I'm so stereotypical. Like I want everything in 140 characters, but it's like we don't really, there's too much information coming in from every angle at all times.
Yeah.
Even I have a nanny for my kids, and I mean, I love her and I want her to communicate with me, but like if I don't put this on do not
Like,
disturb,
stop sending pictures of us
yeah,
being.
it's like 20 pictures or like quick questions, or because everybody is so accessible 24/7. So we do have to adjust the way we think and the way we're communicating because we're adjusting no matter what. So we need to like kind of start to drive that, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. And then really thinking through like there's a difference between good writing and effective writing. And good writing is what we all learned in school. You have like interesting sentence structure and great vocabulary, and you're building on an idea, and you have a thesis statement and supporting paragraphs and all of that. That's good writing. That has no place in our business. It's just too much. So effective writing is, yeah, fewer words. Shorter sentences is a really interesting one. You can say the exact same thing, but break up your sentences, so that what happens, they've done studies, this was part of Todd's research, when when you're reading, when you get to a period, it's called the period pause effect. It's very creatively named. But when you get to a period, you pause and your brain sort of consolidates what you just read, right? If you can't consolidate it, you go back and you read again, or you just cruise past it. But the way to sort of hack that is make the sentences super short. I'll give you an example. I put this together for something, and I don't know that it'll come through in writing as in speaking as well, but I went to the store in order to get ingredients for dinner because they were out of chicken cutlets. I went with the thighs, which I still think will be delicious. So that would be one sentence you would write in a text, or you break it down and you say, I went to the store to get dinner ingredients. They were out of chicken cutlets, so I got thighs. I still think it'll be delicious. Like there you have like 3 separate ideas, and your brain can process each of those sentences like that because it's not multivariable.
Yeah, and it did come through, even reading it out loud, it came through. Talk to me about, because I prefer this. I prefer that you talk to me like this. I prefer to talk like this. And I was I was telling you and admitting to you that I've been having a hard time lately. I keep referencing my kids, but it's like, I feel like I'm just in this whirlwind time in my life. And it's like, I like to just be so short. So like, I feel like it's helping me, and I hope it's helping the people. But then I have some people that put a ton of thought into things, and it's long, and I feel like a jerk almost when I'm responding back to them short. And we have to get comfortable with, if this is my communication style, maybe just saying that out front. And we talked about like certain times, talk to me about that. Talk to me about your communication style as you've started to be a little bit more concise. When do you feel like you're being too, terse sometimes? How do you think that is coming across, and how do you kind of navigate that?
So I would say, for starters, most of the time when we're communicating, it's with people with whom we have a relationship, and that's important. So you and I have a friendship where I don't doubt your warmth for me or that you like me or whatever it is. So when you send through a 1-sentence email, the relationship supports my assumptions about that email, which is that you're moving quickly and this is efficient. Not you really hate me and don't really want to communicate with me. But so the relationship sort of undergirds the communication style, and it's also why it's so important in our work. Once in a while, you have to pick up the phone, and they have to hear the warmth in your voice and your light touch and your humor or whatever it is. And then everything you write is sort of viewed through the prism or the feelings that you've established, personally, one-to-one. The other thing it makes me think is I think there is a status element to it, in terms of if you are writing to someone who is higher status. Maybe it's me writing to a brand new client that I'm really trying to connect with. It's not the place for short, sharp communication. Mm-hmm. That's where you need to be a little more deferential. So just to bear that in mind, it's not for every situation, but really when a relationship is established. And I think it's totally fine to call out and say, here's what I endeavor to do in my writing. I want to be really quick and not take more of your time than necessary. Right. So if you ever want more detail, pick up the phone, call me, shoot me back a note, say you want more detail, but you'll see that I try to be really efficient with my words to save you time. And it is a kindness. You are being kind to someone. When you send them something that is easy to digest, easy to act on, right, you're doing them a service. And that's how I feel when I receive something super clear. Mm-hmm. Like at this tax accountant, she's amazing. And she says, Lauren, please call Bill, with his number right there. And that's all it is. So I call the payroll guy immediately because I don't have to wade through 3 paragraphs to then see that it seems like a gentle suggestion that I should call Bill, which I'm never going to do. Mm-hmm. No, it's so true. It might look like she's ordering me around, but really I see it as a real kindness that she's just helping me like execute. Yeah. And it is, again, I think that with the pandemic and like people going from home and that type of thing, it's kind of accelerated this change, but we definitely have, like, you and I admittedly sat and talked for like 10 minutes before we started this and like caught up. And I think that's the thing too. If you're able to free up more time, then you can now where I'm able to talk more when I want to just like kind of catch up with how someone's doing. Like you're saying, when I'm driving and picking up the phone, I'm saying, how are you? Like what I don't need to drag out
think about it that way. I'm trying to help people that might be like, well, how am I don't need to drag out things that you and I are just going to talk about. Like we have a couple work things we deal with. It's just like, hey, Lauren wants to do this. Great. Done. Bang. Okay. Move on. I'd rather get on the phone with you and chat and catch up for 10 minutes than drag out something that could just be done in 3 words. So I think that kind of thinking about that piece too, you're freeing up the time for the connection, for actually like connecting with people versus.
Yeah, such a good point.
Yeah. Yeah. So the last thing I kind of had, unless you have anything else you want to leave us with, all of this kind of boils down, I think, a lot of times to call to action.
Yeah.
An example you've given, call this person, do this. Can you talk us through just like some of the ways you've incorporated call to action?
Totally. I think the most important aspect of that is having one.
Mm-hmm.
Every email, every text. I mean, it maybe not every email or text has a call to action, but if you have a call to action, make it just one. You can't have multiple because that just, it gets diluted. Some of Todd's research shows if you make 2 requests in an email, the likelihood of either one of them getting done is far lower than if you make just 1 request.
That's
so
great.
You might say, this is impossible for me to not ask these 2 questions. Well, it's not impossible. You just have to choose which one.
Mm-hmm.
If you want a response, ask 1 question. And then I think the other thing about a call to action is you got to make responding easy. So I got an email recently from someone who's thinking about getting into real estate and wanted some time to chat. I'm usually happy to do that. But he wrote an email saying, would love to get together sometime. What's your schedule like? And I'm like, what? No, I'm not gonna I don't even know you. This is doing a favor for you. I'm not gonna sit down and tell you what my schedule is like over the next few weeks.
Right.
And contrast that with someone who says, I would love to meet with you for 20 minutes. I can come to your office. I can do, Monday between 12 and 5, Wednesday between 10 and 3, and Friday between 12 and 5.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a good time? Now it's just 1 email back from me.
Right.
Monday at 2. See you then. So I think making responding easy by laying out, options and they just have to choose one is really effective.
I love that. So I always like to leave people that are listening with one thing they can do. So that's kind of 2 parts, but the one call to action is the one thing I really want to circle back on. That's one thing you can do. If you're listening to this podcast and you're like, how am I going to implement this? How am I going to, definitely pick up the book. We'll put it in the show notes, all of those things. And you can always reach out to us and we'll get to that piece. But if you're going to just implement one thing from listening to this, everything you do today, tomorrow, try to do it for the next week. One call to action in your emails, even in your texts, even when you feel like I need to tell them to do these 3 things, maybe try one and then try the other one after. And making the responding easy, I think, would be the second part of that. If you could just take one thing away that you can put to use, I think those are really good examples without overthinking it. It shouldn't be hard to just be brief.
It is hard in that I do think just one last thought. We write for different purposes, but one purpose of writing is to figure out what you're thinking yourself, what I'm thinking. And that's a longer form writing. And I do think I think if I could make one call to action, it would be revise. Write something and then revise it for simplicity. I want to mention one other thing. Todd Rogers has an AI tool that is remarkable. Let me see if I can find it. It is HTTP. It's writingforbusyreaders.com/AI. And it is a AI tool that is built on top of ChatGPT and trained on the basics of writing for busy readers. And it's wild. If you've written an email and you have a draft of it, throw it in there and see what it pumps out. And you'll be like, oh my gosh. Wow. I've done it with emails where I'm like, how can it improve this? This is really good. And I put it in and I'm like, that's better. That's
so cool. I'm going to definitely check that out and I'll put that in the show notes too.
Great.
All right. Well, you have to do a fun question. What's something you're looking forward to this year?
Oh gosh.
It can be anything.
I always look forward to so many things. I just bought a house up in Waterville Valley, the adorable little house. And I'm just
Chalet.
having fun setting that up and spending time out there, getting to know all the trails and everything. It's really good.
Awesome. I have maybe a silly question. I don't know the area that well. Is there like any like summer component there, lake?
Well,
What?
it's just mountains. I mean, I love
Okay, so
hiking.
yeah,
And so being able to walk out my door and just go for a 4 mile hike is amazing.
that's amazing. Yeah, that's a beautiful area. Cool. Well, we'll be excited to hear about that. Can you tell people where they can find you?
Sure. At laurenholleran.com. It's probably where to get general info. And then always available at laurenholleran.com. It's my email, but send short emails.
Perfect. Yeah, no long emails. You won't read them. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was such an interesting topic to jump into. And anyone that does either use the tool, read the book, please reach out to either or both of us. I'd love to hear because I think this is so exciting. And I'm going to try to spend the next week revising everything.
Nice. This was fun, Nicole. Thank you.